Alright guys, HyDra again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far, with Rostermania continuing to go down. Some drama emerging between two old members of the same organisation. Drazah won the Call of Duty World Championship on Los Angeles Thieves back in 2022, and his old boss definitely sending some daggers last night. Whether he was joking or not, however, Drazah, did he take it personal? Did he not? Definitely some interesting responses going down yesterday. Very much interested your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Treyarch are revealing something, probably already have by the time this video goes live, on Black Ops 6 today. There's been some speculation what it's going to be. Is it going to be zombies related? What are they going to do? But of course, the Black Ops 6 beta is coming out very shortly indeed, and we shall see if it's actually as good as some of the pro players say that it is. Although, you know, we've heard words from pros that have played the game kind of ahead of time in the last few years, and it's not always necessarily translated into actually a good title, right? This from Dashy, as we talk about some of the players here in this Rostermania saga. Capsadol, he was of course on the Boston Breach team at the start of last season. That did not last especially long. The team of Snoopy, Slasher, Priestahh and Capsadol at the start of last season, and then of course they got rid of Capsadol, brought in a Simp for a while, right? So yeah, there were questions at the time whether Cap should have been dropped. I thought he was actually pretty good. He was definitely, you know, on a par, I would say, with Snoopy. Of course, he was on Boston, back in Vanguard as well, to great effect. So Cap, one of these players that I wouldn't be surprised if an opportunity arrives back again in the CDL for him, because as we've talked about before, and we'll talk about again, SMGs are, you know, the lifeblood of many of these teams. To be fair to AR players, they don't have it as easy as they used to, actually. If you look at this most recent season, I think every single MVP winner, apart from Cellium at the end of the year, who was an AR, was an SMG. Every event. Major 1, it was CleanX the MVP. Major 2, I'm guessing it was Simp, of course, when FaZe won. Major 3, Shotzzy won it. Major 4, it was HyDra. And then Champs, it was Shotzzy. So, despite the fact that ARs will usually have better numbers, I think it has been kind of well known over the last couple of years that the SMGs are more impactful, and they generally are the winners of these MVP awards. But still, Cellium broke the mold at Champs. But we know that's how it tends to work, that SMGs are in higher demands generally. If you're a main AR, good luck getting into the league with the way that it currently is. Now, with guys like Clay maybe stepping away, going onto the desk, with guys like Accuracy maybe stepping into coaching, there's maybe more opportunities out there for many ARs to actually break in. But for SMGs, they're always going to be in the conversation, right? So Cap is a name to definitely keep in mind. Speaking of some of the AR players, though, we're pretty sure Cammy is going to get a spot on the Boston Breach. Well, as it stands, he's on Boston's roster for next year, unless, of course, they were to somehow change their mind, which would not be completely out of the realms of possibility, but would nonetheless be a bit of a surprise. His LAN record this year was all right. I mean, of course, he didn't really play that much. He was briefly on the Los Angeles Thieves this season, didn't really, you know, go so well, and then, of course, he was on Boston as well towards the end of the year, so not exactly, well, at the World Cup, basically. Not the year he was looking for again. We've seen glimpses of that, like, Cold War Cammy, but it does seem like Boston are going to stick with him. I think that's probably a fine decision, but this has got to be it, hasn't it, surely, right? Because we're going back to a Treyarch game for the first time since Cold War. So, you know, we've talked about, is Cold War Cammy going to come back? Is he ever going to be able to get to those levels again? If there's any year that will show whether he's going to be able to do it or not, it's probably back on a Treyarch game, right, here in Black Ops 6. Also worth remembering, it's not like Cammy was godlike at the start of Black Ops Cold War. He actually only became godlike from like Major 3 and onwards. So even if Cammy, let's say on Boston, doesn't necessarily hit the ground running crazy hard this year, he's got to be better than he was this year. But if he doesn't hit the ground crazy hard, doesn't necessarily mean that he can't go God mode at the end of the year again. But look, we've been talking about this now for like 3 or 4 years. Is Cold War Cammy coming back? The general feeling in the community is probably not, but you know, they're going to try it for one more year, and if it doesn't work out in Black Ops 6, that's probably it, you would think, for his career in competitive Call of Duty. These were Clay's cards, by the way. Now, this doesn't surprise me a lot. His LAN record and his LAN performance is just so much better than online. Part of that was because Gwyn wasn't as good. Online, to like when he got to LAN, Gwyn's numbers weren't as good, so there were more kills to go around. But I guess it goes both ways, right? Clay played better, Fellow played better. But, you know, the numbers are quite substantially better, right? Certainly in terms of hardpoint damage per 10, in terms of search and destroy damage per rounds, and even like ticks per round and stuff in control was better as well. So Clay was a very solid, competent, like even you could say excellent AR on LAN this season, but the problem is that online is just too important, right? Like there are so many online games. Clay is obviously frustrated, and for good reason, about playing online COD all the time, and I totally get it. It's the same for many other players, especially when there are 5 weeks of online qualifiers going into a major. The problem is, you've got to do pretty well in those 5 weeks of online qualifiers, otherwise you're not starting in winners, and you're going to have a very hard time when you actually get to LAN in the first place. So, you know, and also they weren't always together, right? At the start of the season, especially, the Ravens guys were spread across the country because Carolina didn't get them their facility, and even then their facility was, I'm pretty sure, Brian Saint's apartment, so, like, it wasn't really ideal. And even then, they weren't always there in person together anyway. So, I think for me, there was online Clay when the team wasn't together. There was online Clay when the team was together, when he played better, because, you know, more of a team environment, more energy, whatever. And then there was LAN Clay, who was substantially better. So if the entire season was LAN, I'd have no concerns about picking up Clayster to captain my team. But if the format stays as it has done this most recent season, then I think teams will be like, is this really the best idea? These were Cellium's numbers as well. Lots of purple on this one, right? Every one of his cards had a purple number somewhere, or at least one purple number, actually. His Search and Destroy KD online this year was the highest in his role in the league. His Control KD was the highest. His hardpoint wasn't that strong, like good hill time, but 1.17, but relatively low kills per 10, damage per 10. That changed substantially at the World Cup, as we well know. His damage to round in Search was the highest again in the entire league. So that was a key record for FaZe. And I mean, look at the record, by the way. 25-3 online. Like, we talked about FaZe not executing at events this season, but in terms of where they were throughout the regular season, they were comfortably the strongest team again. 25-3 is ridiculous. 18-7 on LAN, 43-10 overall, with the highest KD in his role in every single mode at the end of the season overall. So, you know, another good season for Cellium. You know, I wouldn't say great, because I actually don't think it was great for the majority of the year. I think the Drazah, you could argue, was better on the eye test and even on the numbers. But at the World Cup, that's like what Cellium can do when he's trying to play in the way that I think he should have been playing for the last couple of seasons. So that's a scary sign for the rest of the league. His first blood rate as well was actually kind of ridiculous, really. Like 28-7 first blood rate on LAN. Like, that's an absurd return. Not getting anywhere near as many engagements as aBeZy, for example, who was, you know, well over double these number of first bloods, but when he does get into a first blood engagement, he's almost always positioned to win it. So yeah, impressive stuff. As I said before, Method was also commenting on SMG players being more valuable than AR players when you're trying to build one of these rosters, but it's not like Cellium is going to be going anywhere from that FaZe team. But let's talk about some of the drama here, because as Method says, you know, let's run that back to Nadeshot. And Nadeshot had a pretty interesting, you know, little stand-up routine that he was doing in front of the 100 Thieves guys here. The chat was coming through with their suggestions on, you know, what to talk about, who to roast, and he was like, hey, I better not criticize Hector as in Hex, because this guy's gonna sue me. But he did want to give his thoughts on Drazah. So now look, what he says is Drazah has a crippling gambling addiction. That's his roast to Drazah. Now, obviously this is in like a joke context and a joke setting, so to some degree, of course, he's going to be playing around. But look, he's throwing some shots to Hex, throwing some shots to Drazah on some level, and I just absolutely love this new, like, completely unfiltered Nadeshot. Like, Nadeshot's always been, and for good reason, one of the best personalities in the scene, and, you know, the fact that he's been able to come back over the last couple of years, turn the stream on, it's just phenomenal entertainment every single day. So great to witness, to be honest. But yeah, what do we think about this, especially on the Drazah point, right? Because let's not forget, Drazah was on Los Angeles Thieves. He helped win Nadeshot and the Thieves their world championship. So I'm sure that relationship there is still good. He, of course, played one more year on Thieves as well before then parting ways, going to FaZe, and the rest is history since then. And Drazah won his world championship on Thieves with the roster that they put together. So yeah, sure, he won the World Cup on FaZe, but his world championship ring in 2022 was on the Los Angeles Thieves. So, you know, on some level, this relationship is probably pretty good, but I'll share the clip and then we'll talk about it.
We can't roast Hector. I won't do that. He might sue me. Drazah has a crippling gambling addiction and will inevitably ruin his entire family's lives. I'm thinking about doing the same thing. Unless we get that Saudi money. Rose Symphony,
So obviously on some level, Nadeshot's joking around here, but every good joke has some element of truth behind it, obviously, and especially with what we'll see in terms of the response from Drazah here in a second, you know, people were saying, well, has Nadeshot got under his skin or has he not? Now, I don't know, you know, how much Drazah's put it on the line on this type of stuff. You know, look, obviously I'm hoping that what Nadeshot says is actually true, but look, there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, with Drazah liking to put a bit of money in the slot machines or whatever, but, you know, it is kind of a known thing that Drazah likes to hit the casino, and I'm not saying he's there all the time, I'm not saying there every day, I'm not saying he's like addicted or whatever. I think Nadeshot's joking around. But you know, this has been talked about before, as Drazah says back in, you know, 2023 or whatever, anyone trying to gamble, and you know, I just had a quick search for how many times he's mentioned casino. He doesn't tweet about the casino all the time, I mean, he hasn't done so in over a year, so there's nothing really to this. But I remember that, I think there was some event, was it Major 2 in maybe Vanguard, and I forget exactly when that was, but it was a Minnesota event, and it was like right next to a casino. I know that like all the players were there, like so much of the prize winnings for that event just disappeared at the casino that night. So you know, here's Drazah talking about hit the casino, what should I do, beach casino or stream, and he hasn't tweeted about this in a while, so I really don't think there's much to it. But you know, this is even in 2021 where he said it's never been worse, lost some money gambling, and then he was joking around in the replies, maybe he wasn't joking, I don't know, like JCat replies and says no, like he lost his cash, and Drazah's like, alright, I'm gonna double down, I'm gonna get my money back or whatever, and Drazah's like, I'm down. So you know, I don't know, this of course was he on Thieves at this point? Yeah, he obviously was, right, because this is during 2021, during the Cold War season, when they were gearing up for their legendary run to win the World Championship the next year. So I don't know, make of that what you will. The funny thing really was that then Drazah then responded to the situation and says, hey, you know, this guy's just pissed that I won champs when he couldn't. Now, you know, obviously Nadeshot's in part joking initially, maybe fully joking, questions on that. So is Drazah joking around as well, or is he not, right? Because, you know, he says, this guy never won champs, I did. Which is kind of a funny thing to say to the owner of the organisation that, like, employs you when you won your world championship or whatever. But, like, I'm gonna take it on the side of it just being a bit of banter between the pair of them. But there were certainly replies to Drazah here saying, oh, you're so soft, took it so personal and all this. And I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think with Drazah, he's an interesting character just because he's obviously like the heel or whatever you want to say of the scene, and gets a lot of criticism, gets a lot of hate, you know, people always in his replies and stuff. So I feel like as a result of that, he's never getting like the benefit of the doubt, you know. You'll generally see this in the league with various players, that the ones that people like, they get the benefit of the doubt and stuff, the ones that people don't like, they don't get the benefit of the doubt. And whether that's fair or not, you know, it's probably fair, that's just how, you know, humans work, isn't it? But you know, I thought the reaction here was kind of entertaining, but very much intrigued to your thoughts as always in the comments section below. I did briefly share this yesterday, but I thought I'd kind of actually talk about it in a bit more detail at the end of the video here on what was the most competitive major of the year, because Major 3 in many ways probably was. You look at the events at the start of the year, like Minnesota made a good run at the first event of the season, and it was Los Angeles Guerrillas making that surprising run back at Major 4 towards the end of the season. I think Major 3 in many respects does fall into this category, right, because OpTic Texas, to win the events, they had to beat the New York Subliners, who are now Cloud9, but they had to beat the Subliners as they were back then. They then had to beat FaZe. They then had to beat Toronto, right? So OpTic, I think, were the only team to go through every single one of their, like, chief opposition to win the tournament. And also they were the only team of the year to successfully beat their, like, bogey team, right, on LAN. Because even FaZe, they could not beat Toronto on LAN. The other teams also had their bogey teams. But OpTic were, despite losing to FaZe most of the time, they were at least able to beat FaZe on LAN this year, which was not true for the other teams with, you know, whichever team was giving them trouble. But very much interested in your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.